This is the big story of the day. Today, the Labour government said that foreign sex offenders won't be allowed to claim asylum in Britain.
And we're also taking action today to strengthen the asylum system to ensure that people who have committed sex offences, who are put onto the sex offenders register, will not be granted asylum in the UK, because we've had some shocking cases where that has happened, where they've been granted asylum, and I think that is wrong. And so we're changing the law on that as well.
Let's pick this apart. Why are they allowed into Britain in the first place? This legislation may not actually stop any rapes or sexual assaults, since it doesn't stop sex offenders entering the country. Does this mean that we can deport them? The answer to that is no. They can still appeal deportation using the European Convention on Human Rights. The government can't and won't confirm that this will lead to a single deportation. But breaking news for you tonight, just very shortly before I came on air, actually. A Labour MP has now broken ranks and urged Sir Keir Starmer to either modify or leave the ECHR. Graham Stringer told the Daily Telegraph, "You wouldn't buy a car made in 1951. Why should we accept international treaties that were appropriate midway through last century?" So there we go. The noises are rising now. The Home Office refuses to say how many asylum seeker sex offenders are currently in Britain. But Ministry of Justice data from last year showed that foreign nationals are responsible for nearly a quarter of all sex offences. Foreign nationals make up just 9.3% of the population, but account for 23% of sex crimes. Two major asylum seeker hotspots are, of course, Afghanistan and Eritrea. Well, those nationalities are more than 20 times more likely to account for sexual offence convictions than British nationals. Overall, foreign nationals were 71% more likely than Britons to be responsible for sex crime convictions. Another point, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Today, it was revealed that a gay rights charity, the Peter Tatchell Foundation, has been inundated with South Asian asylum seekers donating and asking for membership cards in what seems to be a bid to convince the Home Office that they are actually gay, so we can't deport them back home. Of course, that really is a con, isn't it? The point is this. Today's announcement from Labour does nothing to stop foreign sex offenders getting to Britain, and it does nothing to help deport them. Let's get the views of my panel. We've got columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, political commentator, GBNews presenter Alex Armstrong, and, of course, as well, political commentator Zoe Grunwald. Alex, I'll start with you on this. I mean, look, it's all very well and good saying, isn't it? OK, we're not going to allow sex offenders to claim asylum in Britain, but we're not stopping them coming in and we're not getting rid of them either.
Yeah, it's political theatre at the very best, isn't it? It's a lie. And guess what? It's an election week. Would anyone have guessed, hey? Would anyone have guessed that Labour are losing mass amounts of votes in the Red Wall to right-wing parties? Right, they're gone. They're gone. They have lost this argument already. I just want to bring up a tweet made by a Tory MP, I forget his name, Ben Abessi Jekde, I think, actually. He quoted this story, and I want to tell you what it's about this one. There was a Jamaican foreign criminal who raped a 17-year-old while he was on bail because he had abducted a 15-year-old that he'd been grooming since she was 14. There was a letter circulated and signed by dozens of Labour MPs against his deportation. Keir Starmer was one of those signatories.
Yes.
This is the shocking reality. Labour do not want to change this. If they wanted to, they would have spent their entire time in opposition saying, yes, we need to change the rules. They don't care.
OK, so
that's my opinion.
Esther, your views on this, I mean, again, it just feels like it's quite easy to pick apart that idea.
I mean, it's almost ludicrous that we're having this conversation. We will not allow sex offenders to claim asylum in Britain. Why are foreign sex offenders our problem? Like, why are we even having a conversation about tolerating these types of people in British society? But I think this opens a can of worms for the Labour Party, because if they're willing to breach the ECHR in this way, allegedly, by saying these people don't have the right to remain in the UK, well, why stop at sex offences? Why not why not go for people who commit terrorist offences or who have terrorist leanings, or people that assault people in public, for example, or push people onto train tracks in London? I mean, if you can actually if you're willing to go against the ECHR for stuff like this, then really there is no point to be signatories of the ECHR, because you're clearly saying there are cases where we should put our national interest first, like not having foreign sex offenders roaming our streets.
Yes.
And that's the issue that they're going to have. I don't think anything is going to happen. I think they've actually just shown, one, the disdain they have for the British public. They think we're stupid.
Well,
but
this
two,
is it.
they can do something, they're choosing not to.
It's the kind of thing that if you just put this on the front page of a newspaper or you put out there to Joe Blogs on the street, I'm not trying to, have a go at anyone here, but what I'm saying is the headline looks good. Oh, they won't be able to claim asylum. But literally just think about it for a minute, and it doesn't stop people coming in, and it doesn't say that we're going to be able to.
And why were they able to before?
Any of them. But Zoe, I'll put this to you. This is the first noises now of some kind of rebellion from the Labour benches about leaving or modifying the ECHR. That broke just before we came on air. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so Graham Stringer is an interesting Labour MP. He has actually been quite outspoken on some things you would say that aren't very Laboury. I think he's a bit of a net zero sceptic as well. So potentially when it comes to which Labour MP was most likely to break ranks, I think Graham Stringer's up there. I think what is interesting about this is there is actually a clause in the Refugee Convention which says that if somebody has done a serious crime and it comes for a violent crime, they can be deported. That doesn't break the, the
They've
convention.
had more than 12 months in prison, I think.
I think that might be right. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the UK or the... But basically, there is actually precedent for this. I think the problem is that courts were not applying this and things were getting tied up. And there's two issues here.
It should be automatic.
But
they shouldn't have to apply for it. So actually, in British law, it's automatic. If you've served a 12-month sentence, you are automatic.
OK, so I think this is what Labour's trying to do now. I think they're trying to pin this down so that courts are operating in the UK on the assumption that this is what the law is. Yeah. And when they interpret the law, they're interpreting the British law. So I think it could make a difference. The problem is the legal system here is bunged up.
Exactly. Yeah. And what did we see? By the way, I couldn't believe this. I was reading loads of different articles about this earlier, including the one in The Guardian. And quoted in that is a bloke from Amnesty International, who I won't name here now because he's not here to defend himself, but saying that this just shouldn't go ahead because it was rushed through and it might unfairly impact refugees. And I think, are you so much of an left-wing open borders fanatic that you are basically willing to go into bat for foreign sex offenders? And I think maybe they are. I worry that we've got judges like that as well. I'll go to Alex for no.
I think it's so abundantly clear to the public that there is activist judges in our system. We have, Robert Jenrick was talking about them just the other day in the House of Commons. It is so abundantly clear that our justice system is infiltrated by left-wing activists who have an agenda, have a pro-immigration agenda, and are interpreting the law the way they want it to. They are literally taking the law and interpreting it in their own words.
But that's because the law is inadequate. I'm going to say something.
I don't believe it is.
If the law was clear-cut, if the law is saying, actually, if you've been convicted and sent to prison for more than 12 months, automatic deportation, there is no way to interpret around it. That's the point.
Well, maybe I think to add on to that, you've got institutions like the ECHR that are adding laws on top of laws. So if you're a judge, what do you say? Is the ECHR more important? Am I going to get challenged now from the European Court of Human Rights over my ruling on this case here?
OK, so I'm going to say something controversial here. I think we should suspend perhaps indefinitely our asylum system completely. One, you would see the boat crossings stop overnight because there is no legal. We have paused our asylum system, much like Japan, that doesn't have an asylum system, but it's not an international pariah. We have a fundamentally broken asylum system where we are sending the 90% of asylum seekers to basically just 9 out of 10 or 9 or 10 cities in the UK, which is not enough. It is. We don't screen well enough. We have a lot of people that are taking advantage of the system, and then we have actual people that need asylum, like women in Afghanistan, for example, that are being pushed to the back of the queue. This conversation doesn't even need to happen about letting or not letting foreign sex offenders in. Pause the asylum system. Period. Just stop it.
The point is, again, what I think people will be able to see through, the viewers and listeners of this programme, is that in order for them to not grant them asylum, we pretty much have to allow someone to come into Britain, then commit a sex crime, and then not give them asylum because of that. Of course, that leaves, frankly, a tidal wave of victims, doesn't it, and survivors who, their lives may never be the same again. Their entire family's lives may never be the same again. And are we really willing to let that happen? I know we're not, but it would appear that the current government, I don't know, is really. So just on this, Yvette Cooper there, refusing to come on GBNews again this morning, possibly because she would have to face some questions like this. I mean, do you really think that Labour's going about this the right way? I mean, if she really wants to appeal to working class people, especially in the Red Wall, she should be coming on shows like this and explaining herself, shouldn't she?
Well, I think it's important that politicians try and do as much outreach as possible and they try and communicate with all audiences. And I think, I don't want to be too cynical about this, but Alex is right that this is a policy that appeals to a certain voter group during a local election week. Even, refugee charities are saying it's been rushed through. That seems to be their main complaint about it. It does feel a little bit knee-jerk, and it actually kind of rings true with, I think, what a lot of Labour's strategy has been recently, which has kind of been slightly, I would say, chasing reform's tail in some ways.
I honestly
and I think it comes through. I think it feels a little bit desperate sometimes.
It's not just desperate. The public, I think this is the feeling I get when I saw this, is that the public are being taken for fools. They're being taken for morons that can't see through the mist of political theatre. Of course we can. Of course anyone's going to go and look at Keir Starmer's voting record. Anyone's going to go and look at all these signatures he's put down saying, I don't want this foreign criminal being deported, and go, now you changed your mind.
Well, this is it. Now, this is the thing I will say, which is that are we not all being asked to believe that this version of Keir Starmer is true when we've seen him for the last 20-odd years and we know he's very we know the letters he's signed, we know who his mates are, the likes of Lord Hermer and the likes of Philippe Sands, those two lawyers who seem incredibly left-wing and perfectly willing to represent people like one of the people who might have masterminded the 9/11 terror attack, or indeed Mauritius, over the Chagos Islands. And we are being asked to believe that now this version of Keir Starmer, that we see on that screen behind me there, suddenly wants to deport foreign sex criminals.
Yeah, of course not. I mean, this man doesn't have a single conviction to speak of. But I don't think people care so much what he believes as opposed to what he does. I don't care whether he believes that the sky is green, right? But I want him to implement policies to keep me and my family safe. And he hasn't done that. The best thing Keir Starmer could do right now is fire about 90% of his cabinet. Yvette Cooper is an incompetent. David Lammy is an incompetent. Ed Miliband is an incompetent. These people combined between them have like 70 years in politics, and we cannot name a single achievement of theirs. These are not... To have a Home Secretary that's making such knee-jerk decisions kills the credibility of his government. That is the point.
What would you say to that, Zoe, both on the personal aspects there of those particular cabal of incompetence? I think.
There's more of them. But those are the top three.
Baskets of incompetence, as they're referred to. But also on just the general level of credibility about Keir Starmer's points here.
I mean, I think the thing about Keir Starmer is that he thinks of himself as a sort of managerial pragmatist. I don't think he has an ideology. I think he takes on what is around him. And I think what he does have around him are people like Morgan McSweeney, who are a certain type of Labour, that kind of blue Labour, and maybe do actually genuinely believe more of these kind of socially conservative things than other people around him. I don't feel the same way about Ed Miliband and Yvette Cooper necessarily as you do.
They're completely incompetent.
Having said that, I don't know what direction this cabinet is taking. It seems a bit confused, and I don't think Keir Starmer is calling the shots.
Yeah.
Well, he's an HR manager.
It's just a complete fraud, isn't it? To believe that all of a sudden they've got these values that, actually we need to tighten back on net zero. Oh, yes, we need to clamp down on illegal migration. You've just spent the last 14 years, of which this cabinet has been in Parliament for most of that, of campaigning against these very, 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 very sensible policies. It is totally mind-blowing.
There seems to be a lack of credibility for it. Look, like I said before, that big news today really was that Labour are coming out saying they won't allow foreign sex offenders to claim asylum. Clearly, people are saying, well, why are they here in the first place? Maybe that will be the better solution is to not let them in.